Good afternoon. The September 19th, 2023 Board Work Session is now in order. Paul, roll call, please.
Mr. Susan?
Here.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Ms. Campbell? Here. Ms. Jenkins?
Here.
Mr. Trent?
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on a public work and rule development for board policy 3124 drug-free workplace. Is there anyone here present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here present who wishes to address this item? Any board discussion on this item? Hearing none, moving forward. The next item is a public hearing and rule development for policies 1001 through 1470. We're not going to. Yeah, no, I'm going to move right to the 100. The next item is a public hearing and rule development for board policy 0100 definitions. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Any board discussion? Hearing none, moving on. The next item is a public hearing and rule development for board policy 0118, philosophy of the board. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Does anybody wish to speak on this item? Any board members have any discussion? Hearing none, we're moving on. The next item is public hearing and rule development for board policy 3232, political activities. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? There's only one person in the whole room, so I'm just going to look directly at her and say. All right, yeah, go.
Mr. Gibbs, does he need to go through each one of the policies through one?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Just like last time.
So he's, but I don't think that happened, did it? I mean,
Yeah, we
thought he
did.
skipped
I had to
over
do it the
those
last
and
time.
then
It's
go through
been
them
a
last.
what's that?
Yeah.
I know. Well, that's what I'm just, I'm,
know.
because I'm pulling up the attachment and I'm like, we lumped them all together on the agenda. And so I'm like,
Yeah, that's the way we did it last time too, but you have to open it up and then you open the tab that has all of them listed.
okay, so,
So if you remember, we tried to pass them all as a lump that one time. And then Paul said, hey, wait a minute, and then back up, we have to go individually.
right.
All right. Hearing no speakers coming forward, does any board member wish to discuss this item? Hearing none. The next item is a public hearing and rule development for board policy 3126, direct contact communicable diseases. Is there anyone present who wishes to discuss this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to discuss this item? Any board members wish to discuss this item? Hearing none, moving on. The next item is public hearing and rule development for board policy 3575, candidates for public office. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Hearing none, any board members wish to discuss this item? Hearing none, moving on. The next item is a public hearing and rule development for policy 3580, supporting political candidates. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Any board members wish to address this item? Hearing none, we're moving on. First topic is a presentation by Facilities and
Yeah,
Planning.
You gotta go back through those one time.
Yeah, you got to go back through. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Like it
I thought
wasn't,
he skipped it intentionally. So.
no, it wasn't that. That's what I was trying to say was,
What happened now?
so the policies, because they're all lumped together,
You gotta open.
1001 through 1470.
I'll switch you
So you got to read this for all the policies. That's what I'm,
and then go up here.
And then, yeah, there they are right there.
but you're going to have to scroll through it. So get ready. Here you go.
All right, here we go. You guys ready for this? You guys can go to the bathroom if you need to.
Auctioneer voice. Let's hear you go quick. Come on.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Just give me a second.
Yeah, the title of them isn't on the side.
Ah, it's even better.
Even better. So you have to scroll. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be a little.
So I gotta,
Yeah, no. Open your, go back up. Open it, just click right there. And it'll take you. And you just
But it
gotta
goes
scroll.
current
You
version
just gotta
and
go
you
right
go
there.
scroll down. Yeah.
okay,
Then you
but if
click on
that,
again, and then
but
you
is
scroll.
that that's the
That's the
current
title,
one?
1001.
There's some of them we changed,
District
right?
Word.
So I'd have to go down here to the bottom, just to make sure
The
that the,
clean version, yeah, it'll give you the clean version on there too.
see, now it's records and reports.
You're going to be scrolling and talking. That'll be all right.
If you go to the clean, that's current version, records and reports. That's where you would see change. So if you click on the clean version over there,
Yes, sir.
it'll get you.
Oh, is there a clean version
Yeah, there's clean. If you click right there.
here? Oh, now what happened?
Oh, look at that.
Now
Learned
what
something new
happened?
today. Sorry, Mr. Susan, I know you're probably not like great.
I just got to kind of make sure that we say the right things here. Let me just do some practices here, if you guys don't mind for a second.
Don't worry, the cameras aren't on or anything.
I have no idea what I just did. There we go.
Do you want me to start
Clean
writing them
version.
out ahead of
No,
time?
no, 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 I got it. All right. Here we go. All right. All right.
Sorry.
No, 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 it's a good thing that you brought it up, or else we'd have to go through the whole thing again. All right. Next item is a public hearing and rule development for policy 1001. And that is district organization. Is there anyone here present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present here who wishes to address this item? Is there any board discussion? Hearing none, we're moving on. Next up is to have a public hearing and rule development for policy 1010. This is superintendent relationship. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Hearing none, are any board members wish to address this item? Hearing none. Next item is a public hearing and rule development for policy 1020, employment of the superintendent. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Any board discussion? Hearing none. Moving on, the next item is a public hearing and rule development for policy 1030, superintendent of schools. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Hearing none. Is there any board member that wishes to discuss this item? Okay, hearing none, we move on. The next item is a public hearing and rule development for board policy 1030.01, development of administrative procedures. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Any board member that wishes to address this item? Hearing none, we're going to move on. The next item is to hold a public hearing and rule development for policy 1040, evaluation of the appointed superintendent. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Any board member who wishes to address this item? Hearing none, I'm going to move on. The next item is to hold a public hearing and rule development for board policy 1040.01, non-reemployment of the superintendent. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Hearing none. Are there any board members that wish to discuss this item? Hearing none. Move on. The next item is to hold a public hearing and rule development workshop for policy 1060, incapacity of the superintendent. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Hearing none. Are there any board members who wish to address this item? Hearing none, we're moving on. The next item is to hold a public hearing and rule development workshop for board policy 1112, board staff communications. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Hearing none, are there any school board members who wish to address this item? Hearing none, we're going to move on. And next item, hold a public hearing and rule development workshop for board policy 1113, conflicting employment or contractual relationship. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Hearing none. Any board member who wishes to address this item? Hearing none. The next item is public hearing and rule development for board policy 1120, employment of administrators. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Hearing none. Are there any school board members who wish to address this item? Hearing none, we're going to move on. The next item is to hold a public hearing and rule development for 1120.01, employment of interim principals and supervisors. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Seeing none, are there any school board members who wish to address this item? Hearing none, we will move on. Next item is to hold a public hearing and rule development for Board Policy 1121, conditions for employment and reemployment of the administrators. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Hearing none, are there any school board members who wish to address this item? Hearing none, we'll move on. Next is a public hearing and rule development for Board Policy 1180, records and reports. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Are you wanting to address it?
No, sorry.
I mean, I'm getting excited. 'cause-
No, you're like, somebody say something. No, all I was going to say was our policy number is changing, obviously. So I just saw it because when I clicked on the little thing on the side, it says policy 1170, but it will now be named policy 1180. So
Yeah.
it threw me for a loop for a half second, but I got it figured out. Thank you.
No, not at all. No problem.
Giving you a break so you don't have to talk.
Yeah, no, that's good. I don't even remember where we were on that thing. Are there any board members who wish to discuss this item? Hearing none, moving on. Next is to hold a public hearing and rule development for policy, hang on just a second, you kind of threw me off there. I got
Sorry.
all excited that there's going to have discussion on it. 12181, use of employees' personal property at school. Are there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Hearing none, are there any board members who wish to address this item? Hearing none, we're moving on. The next is to hold a public hearing and rule development for Board Policy 1470, grievance procedure. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Hearing none, are there any school board members who wish to discuss? Hearing none, the first topic is a presentation by facilities and facilities planning, school choice and data analysis. Thank you, Ms. Hand. I think we made the request that Lindemann would talk the whole time. Why are they laughing at us?
I think they're not going to honor that request.
Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for giving us some time to talk about this issue today. Is my mic?
I don't think you're on.
Test, test. Better? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so thank you all for some time this afternoon to brief you on what I believe has evolved into a pretty significant subject. Am I not?
I don't know. Jackie's back there, so I'm not sure if it's.
Am I good?
I don't know. That's what we're at. That's the question.
Better?
Yeah.
Sing a little bit. Okay. All right. So anyway, let's see. Where was I? I was saying good afternoon, and thank you for some time to talk to you about this subject. As you know, every year we do the student accommodation plan, and since Ms. Black has been with us in our planning group, she's been enhancing the data and analysis section of the student accommodation plan. And as we've started to look at that information, we realize there's a lot of questions around choices that parents make as to how and where they educate their children, both internally within our district as well as through charter schools and other educational options that they have. And as you know, the legislature has been expanding choice. So we feel like this is a really important question for us, and it started to lead us to some other important discussion questions as we went through the analysis. And we asked Dr. Mayer from Curriculum and Instruction, she's our Assistant Director of Choice, to join us for this work. And she and Karen have done really an incredible job of putting together some really interesting data that will help us drive facility planning decisions into the future. So for me, kind of the end game of this exercise is to start to work towards a master plan, so to speak, for facilities going into the future and helping us guide our long-term decisions regarding facilities. And I think this work is really the foundation of starting to make those decisions. The process that I'll be recommending to you going forward after you hear the presentation is something that was similar to what we used for the board member district boundary discussions, where we hired that was our planning consultant that did that work, and they interviewed each of our board members. In this case, we would actually have them interview a little bit broader scope of folks who have particular expertise in the subjects that we'll be discussing, and then bringing back something to the board in a workshop session around the first of the year that just talks about the different choices that will come out of this conversation and what direction the board may wish to go with those choices. And then from there, we'll start to drill down into some very specific choices regarding long-term facility planning. But as we do the presentation, you'll see that a lot of these data points are interrelated. So if you'd like, a particular direction, it has implications in other areas. So I'm going to be quiet now, and I'll introduce Karen Black and Dr. Meyer to go through the presentation. So thank you, guys, and thank you for your hard work.
Okay, so we're starting with an in-depth study on parental choice and how that affects our student enrollment. The purpose of our study was to first look at high school program offerings and then go into from-to analysis of charter and choice schools. And then we're going to wrap it up with a comparative study of all of our zone schools and our enrollment. So this first map is showing you our 6 choice schools. The radius of each circle is the average distance students travel, and the percent in each circle represents the percent that lives in that circle of the students that attend those 6 choice schools. There are 4 elementary choice schools and 2 junior-senior high schools. Our second map is our 13 charter schools. Again, the radius of the circle is the average distance the student travels to get to that school, and the percent in there is the percentage that lives within that circle for all of our 13 charter schools. Our last map, because we don't have individual student data for every private school, there are 97 private schools, but we do have the number of enrollment based on October FTE, and that's what's in each yellow box. So that just gives you a background of our schools that are in our district that are our choices. We also have all our zone schools as choices as well. Okay, so our next, we're looking at high school program offerings. The highest amount of program offerings is located in the Palm Bay High School zone, and our least amount is in Cocoa Beach Junior Senior. So they are the total of CTE and academic in each zone. The next one is how many students choice out of that zone. So Palm Bay zone has the highest amount of students choicing out to go to other programs in the district at 665, and Cocoa Beach Junior Senior has the least amount with 43. We then look at students choicing into those school zones, and Rockledge High School has the highest amount of students choicing in, and Cocoa has the least amount of students choicing in. So overall, we're going to look at both choicing in and choicing out, which gives us our net. If the number is above 0, that means they have more students choicing in than choicing out. If the number is below 0, which is a negative number, that means that they have more students choicing out than choicing in. So the lowest number is in the Palm Bay High School zone at negative 492 students. And anything above 0, which is Rockledge with the highest and Cocoa Beach Junior Senior very close in tow. And we also want to point out that Viera also has a high number of students choicing out, which also gives us 0. Okay, we're now going to move on to our choice schools. Again, we have 6 of them. Our first one that's furthest north is South Lake Elementary. It pulls from 14 elementary school zones, 35.7% choice in from Oak Park, and again, it's the most north choice school of elementary. Our next one is R.L. Stevenson, which is located on Merritt Island. It pulls from 31 elementary school zones, 21.3% choice in from Audubon, and another large number on that map, which is the highest number, choice in from Lewis Carroll, but Audubon is the school district that surrounds the school. Each choice school does not have a zone that everyone has to lottery in. So our next school up is Freedom 7. They are beachside. They pull from 33 elementary school zones and 15.1 choice in from Roosevelt Elementary. But the majority of their students fit at 55.1% have to transport at least over one causeway to get to that school. And our last elementary choice school is West Melbourne School of Science. They're the furthest south choice school for elementary. They pull from 32 elementary school zones, 37.7% choice in from Meadow Lane. Okay, moving on to junior, senior highs. There are two of those. One located on Merritt Island, which is Edgewood Junior Senior High. They pull from 12 middle school zones and 11 high school zones. So they're going to have two maps. This first one signifies the middle school, and the second one signifies the high school. So 38.8% choice in from Jefferson and 50% choice in from Merritt Island High. Our other junior, senior high is West Shore. They're located in Melbourne. They pull from 10 middle school zones and 10 high school zones. This first map is attributed to the middle school zones, 24.5% choice in from Hoover, which is the zone that surrounds the school. And at the high school level, 40.6% choice in from Mel High. Okay. Now we're going to go to our charter schools. Our first one up is Pinecrest. They're located in Vieira. They pull from 36 elementary school zones and 10 middle school zones, so there are two maps attributed to them. 25% choice in from Vieira Elementary and 47.8% choice in from Delora Middle. So first is elementary and our second is our middle. Our next one up is Pineapple Cove. They do have 3 campuses, Lockmar being their newest addition that was open last year. They are a K-6, and they pull from 26 elementary schools and 4 middle school zones, and 19.5% choice in from Lockmar, 33.3% choice in from Central, and I apologize, they are K-8 because they're pulling middle school as well. K-7. So there's two maps for them. Then our next one up is another Pineapple Cove, but they're located in West Melbourne, and all these schools are within 5 miles of each other, all the Pineapple Coves. They pull from 25 elementary school zones and 5 middle school zones, 33.4% choice in from West Melbourne, Meadow Lane, and 58.7% choice in from Central. Our next Pineapple Cove is in Palm Bay. They are one of 2 charter schools that offer high school, so they will have 3 maps attributed to them. They pull from 23 elementary, 9 middle school, and 7 high school zones, 9.3 choice in from McAuliffe Elementary, 52.4 choice in from Central, and 34.2 choice in from Heritage. Next one up is Vieira Charter. They pull from 46 elementary school zones and 11 middle school zones, 13.2% choice in from Manatee, and 42.9% choice in from Kennedy. Our next one up is Sculptor Charter. They're the furthest north charter school. They pull from 15 elementary school zones and 6 middle school zones, 24.4% choice in from Imperial Estates, and 58.1% choice in from Jackson Middle. Our next charter school up is Royal Palm. They're located in Palm Bay. They pull from 19 elementary school zones, 6 middle school zones, 11.5% choice in from Port Malabar Elementary, and 23.9% choice in from Stone Middle. Our next one up is Palm Bay Academy, also located in Palm Bay. They pull from 18 elementary school zones, 3 middle school zones, 11.3% choice in from Riviera Elementary, and 57.7% choice in from Stone Middle. Our next one up is Odyssey. Odyssey has 2 campuses. Odyssey Prep is first. They pull from 20 elementary school zones, 18% choice in from Columbia Elementary, so they only have 1 map. Our next one is Odyssey. It's the other charter school that offers high school level. So they pull from 22 elementary, 7 middle, and 8 high school zones. 19.4% choice in from West Side Elementary, 62.1% choice in from Southwest, and 44.14% choice in from Bayside High School. Okay, the next one up is Imagine Schools at West Melbourne. They pull from 27 elementary school zones and 21.2% of their students choice in from Riviera Elementary. Emma Jewel Charter is located in Cocoa. They pull from 23 elementary school zones, 6 middle school zones, 46.1% choice in from Endeavor Elementary, and 36.8% choice in from McNair Middle. Educational Horizons is located in West Melbourne. They pull from 20 elementary school zones and 12.2% choice in from Roy Ellen Elementary. Okay, page 38 of the binder goes over the capacity for each charter and choice school. It also goes over their waitlist numbers and the students enrolled from the October FTE. We want to point out that on average, for the Pineapple Coves, they have about 1,000 on their wait list, and we also have very high wait lists for our choice schools, with West Shore being the highest at 444. Okay, the next two slides are there's 2 maps for each grade level, so elementary, middle, and high school. The first one is showing you how many students choice out of each zone. And the second map shows you the percentage of students that choice out that choose charter. So for this elementary school zone, 702 elementary school students choice out of Meadow Lane and 603 choice out of Jupiter. And within West Side School Zone, the highest percent that choose charter is 86%, meaning there's 14% that choose our programs at our schools. For the middle school, 572 middle school students in Southwest choose other opportunities in the district, and 471 in the Central School Zone choice out. But within the 572 of Southwest's, 90% choose charter. Okay, looking at high school, 665 students choice out of the Palm Bay School Zone and 528 choice out of the Vieira School Zone. Within Bayside Zone, 52.2% choose charter of the students who choice out. Okay. Our last map in this section is a heat map to show you where all the charter schools are located and the density of the students that attend those choice schools. So you can see by pointing out that the density of the students is very high surrounding the school zones, the schools themselves. Okay, I'm now turning over to Karen.
Okay, we've included 5 maps showing the areas in the county with the highest residential growth. We have Titusville, Cocoa and Rockledge, Vieira, West Melbourne, Palm Bay, and South Palm Bay. The red hatched areas on the map indicate areas to be developed. We work closely with local governments to monitor expected growth. When large developments are under planning review, a school capacity determination is calculated, which is the process where we convert the number of proposed homes into the number of potential students that we may expect the neighborhood to generate. The number of students expected is then added to the affected school's capacity and projected enrollment for the next 5 years to determine the effects the proposed development will have on the schools. This process is referred to as school concurrency. On the maps, proposed and potential developments are shown with the number and type of homes proposed. SFD denotes single-family or townhome dwellings. MFA denotes multifamily apartments. The stage of development is also noted. Some are under construction now, while others are concept only and have not been submitted to the local governments, but we know they are possible and have included them for long-range planning purposes. A table on each map shows the total number of students we could expect if all the developments shown on the map were to be constructed. For example, Titusville would have a projected number of 773 elementary students, 211 middle, and 381 high, for a total of 1,365 expected students. Cocoa Rockledge area would have a total of 1,928 expected students. Vieira, if everything was constructed immediately, would be 4,275 students. West Melbourne could potentially be 4,220 students. South Palm Bay area could potentially generate 10,259 students. The maps do not illustrate timing. Some developments are expected to be constructed sooner, while others could be 10, 20 years before completed. It's important to note that when student membership projections are calculated, we do not include everything that you see on these maps. We ask local governments to submit the number of permits they have processed and review land records to determine the rate of actual construction to ensure our projections are based on realistic expectations over the next 5 years. Areas shown in green on the maps are government-owned properties that we don't expect residential development, and the maps do not represent a total build-out, and these maps will be updated as new applications are submitted. Melinda's going to talk more about the permanent capacity maps. Permanent capacity is the school's capacity without relocatable classrooms, brick and mortar, and calculated by DOE based on space uses.
Okay, so again, elementary school will have two maps. The first one showing last year's data of enrollment, and the next map, if you take in the colors now and what they signify, and then moving on, you see that there's a lot of growth in the South Palm Bay and West Melbourne area. They go closer to red, which is 100% or more capacity. The highest number of students utilizing choice, though, do come from schools located in the South and West Palm Bay area. Many of the elementary schools located in the South and West Palm Bay area are currently operating at 80% or higher and are projected to be over 100% in 5 years. But there is a section of 4 that are in the middle of that sea of red that are actually not changing color, which are Lockmar, Turner, McCullough, and Columbia, and they're operating at a lower capacity than all the surrounding area zones. Roosevelt Elementary is operating at 48% capacity, permanent capacity, and is projected to decrease to 37% in 5 years. Oak Park Elementary is operating at 52% permanent capacity and is projected to decrease to 49% in 5 years. Okay, moving on to middle school. This is what the numbers looked like last year for 22-23. And when we look at the map that's projected in 5 years, again, that south area gets a lot closer to red. What we don't see in this map, though, is the new middle school zone that will take effect, which is Vieira, because when we did the projections, they were not in existence. So looking right now, Vieira High School is currently at 107% permanent capacity, but with the addition, Vieira High School will drop to 93% for this upcoming year, and then in 5 years is projected to go back to 107%. Those projections, though, were not based on this new middle school zone, and a lot of students, they follow the path or their friends to the school zone they are. So if we're pulling them back to the Vieira zone, they may stay within that zone and go to Vieira High School. So that 107% may be even more elevated. So right now, there are currently 528 students utilizing choice leaving Vieira School Zone. That may not be the same in years to come. The new middle school may affect this by increasing the number of students who remain in the school zone. Okay, so looking at the capacity last year compared to in 5 years, all the ones around Palm Bay School Zone, they go closer to red, which is closer to 100% or more, while Palm Bay stays the same or increases just a slight. So Palm Bay High School has the highest number of choice offerings, but has the most students leaving the school zone for other opportunities. Also, the net between students utilizing choice to enter the school zone is lower than the students utilizing choice to leave the school zone. The permanent capacity is in use of Palm Bay High School is 60%. Within 5 years, all school zones surrounding Palm Bay are projected to greatly increase in enrollment, while Palm Bay High School zone is projected to slightly increase to 68% permanent capacity. So the questions we'd like you to consider are, should we establish one or more choice schools in the South area? Could the K-8 model work somewhere within the district? What strategies can be used to address underutilized facilities? How should we plan for expected student population growth? How will the new middle school impact enrollment?
Thank you. Pardon me. Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate the good information. So as I mentioned, what I'd like to propose is that we bring in our planning consultant to start to dive into some of those questions, and there's lots more. There's things like, how does transportation fit into the picture? How does debt financing fit into the picture? Clearly, we're going to need new school capacity in several areas within the district. What are our priorities? Are we looking at engaging portables? Should we look at rezoning? What are the choices that we need to make over the next several years to set us up for success in the future? And then also looking at what our charter schools are doing and the impact of school choice in general on our need for capacity. So as we, for example, project that we will have thousands of new students in a particular area, what percentage of those might be taken up by choice? So there's lots of work that we need to do to get to where we're in a place to make decisions, but I wanted to start with kind of the higher level policy overview and in terms of what the board is comfortable with and what might be your priorities for us moving forward so that we can start to drill down into some of these questions. I also like to mention that our facility data plays into this as well. We've done a very robust investment in our schools in the past 7 or 8 years based on the first and second surtax. That was based on facility assessment. We'll be coming to you for updating that assessment probably next year. But our decision making is going to be around, we have 60-year-old schools. Do we continue to invest? Should we be doing something, what should we do with schools that are in a poor condition, especially after we've invested, in some cases, $7 to $10 million. So all of those questions are in play and all of the answers interrelate to one another. So that's why I'd like to start with kind of a high-level conversation with board members and other experts on these types of questions to get us to a starting point for those conversations.
How would you like that to go? You want to discuss all those items right now? Do you want to bring them up singularly? Because I think, like the K-8 model, say, for instance, we could have an hour discussion wrapped around that by itself, right? So you're thinking, well, how do you think this plays out?
So my thinking on this is that I will bring back to you a proposal from our consultant in one of your October meetings. And that proposal will include starting to interview each board member individually, as well as some of our subject matter experts, to get us to a place where, yes, we want to talk about K-8, or no, we don't want to talk about K-8. And will give us kind of a list of priorities for us to drill down more versus those things that are kind of off the table. So like if we all like rezoning as an option to deal with this, then terrific, we keep rezoning on the plate. If we don't, we take rezoning off the plate. And there's a whole host of other ways to deal with enrollment capacity pressures. But I really feel like we need to get a sense of what everyone's comfortable with before we just start lobbing these topics out, because there's a lot of different ways to deal with this.
I'll wait until everybody else discusses, and then I'll come back. Anybody want to discuss, Ms. Han?
So I'm not going to dive deep on this because you're basically asking us if it's okay to engage a consultant in order for us to have these conversations with the consultant first before we have them in front of one another. And we had an opportunity to go over this information with you one-on-one. So I've kind of shared with both Dr. Rindell and the team how I feel about this, which might be unique compared to the other board members. So my only hesitation, though, is I understand the importance of us having conversations with a consultant, but before we move forward with that consultant, I think it would be important and healthy for us to be able to discuss with one another where we kind of come from, because I think we're all going to have different opinions, and it's going to shape what we think and how it's going to go. So if we do that, will there be a point where they come back to us to tell us the feedback, but not necessarily give us a concrete direction, but leave us room to discuss amongst ourselves what we think we should be focusing on?
Absolutely. In fact, that is the exact intention of having the consultant do the initial step and then bring their research back to you in a workshop format around the first of the year. And then we will dive into those topics that are of highest priority for the board.
And I ask that because what we discussed and the things that I care about and what I would like to see, I can't present that to the board because I don't know what the impact of that looks like and how they could come up with that, and they might have a way better way of presenting it to the board. But I would like to know that the board will get to kind of see that idea and that concept. So you have my support and my approval to just start the engagement at least, so we can start having conversations about how to address these needs.
Ms. Campbell?
No, I would agree. I would agree, and first of all, thank you. And I know we all got to go through this together, but it was important for the public to be able to see this data too, because even though like these last maps with the colors are presented every single year in a board agenda item when it comes to capacity, it's in the, somebody has to actually open it and get to page 302 or whatever it is that they're on. And then all the maps with, I loved being, that's from all the from to charts, but again, people don't always look at it, but the way you did it with breaking it down actually on the map with the numbers, all that is really helpful visually for our community, for us and our community to see what's going on. And even if for no other reason than for them to see, look, you can go wherever you want, pretty much. For right now, until all these red schools get frozen, and then you can't. But no, I appreciate the work towards that. I think, there's some things that we're already good at, and I think that as a district, I think in the short term, maybe the quickest moves will be the things that we already are experts in, like our choice schools and things like that. And then maybe if we look at branching out into the unknown, for us at least, maybe some of those, that's kind of more long term. But I just wanted to point out too, that map where the City of Palm Bay board is showing up to over 10,000 students over the next however many years. That, I think we had that conversation, does not include, down in the City of Palm Bay, there are single lots all over the place, and they have sat for years and years and years through the economic downturn. And now that things are picking up, people are starting to build on those single lots, and that 10,000 does not include that number, correct?
Correct.
Right, so those numbers are growing rapidly, which is why we have Sunrise, it's got over 850 students, and Bayside, a couple $100, a couple hundred kids over projection.
Right.
Massive growth already happening right now in the South, in addition to all the buildings. So I think we need to have this conversation sooner rather than later. So I support your moving forward with that.
Well, I'll publicly thank you for doing all the hard work here, just like I did privately. And yeah, you absolutely have my support to move forward. This is something that we can't put off to the side at all. Not anymore after all seeing this. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Obviously, you have my support as well. I'm actually really excited about this. I think this is going to open up the opportunity for our district to look at some different possibilities that we haven't offered in the past. So I think this will be a really good, if we do this right, this should be a really good selling point for why Brevard Public Schools is the best choice for children. So I'm excited. You have my support 100%. Thank you for all the information.
So Sue, thank you so much. I think part of this not only is to try to figure out what to do with all of, but the main thing that we're coming up with is competition. And that's what I love. And so we're developing not a plan based upon, you know what I mean, like what we think or anything like that, but actual statistics that show competitively where we put ourselves in the marketplace. So one of the things I wanted to run through a couple of these is that our ultimate person that makes that choice is the parent, correct? Mm-hmm. So I think in part of the conversation, I didn't hear it inside of here, if we could have an opportunity to where we survey the parents for what they think, and then we can base what we have around that as part of it. So like when we bring up a K through 8, how many of the parents actually think that? Now we know that that's just a statistic based upon parents, but I think it carries a lot of weight, right? I think another survey about, from the parents that went to the charter schools about why they made their choices, that would also help. I think part of the conversation should be wrapped around not only the K-8 and the other things, but about transportation. I think you pointed it out terrifically up there in that many of the choice programs and even the charters have a bubble, and that's where they're going. But currently, would we have more kids maybe participate in programs if they could get to them, like the Fire Academy at Palm Bay, the aviation program at O'Galley? Like, we know that kids have difficulty traveling, so I think transportation's there. As far as the K through 8, one of the things I know is that we built that Vieira Elementary big enough to be a K-8 because I think the rooms are 40 foot. Is that
A
correct?
little bigger. Mhm.
Yeah, so we also, part of the conversation when we talk about K-8, if we talk about building or converting, if there's a conversation wrapped around the sizes and possibilities of those locations, because some of them have elementary school rooms, there's no way they could do it. I also really am very strongly believe in junior seniors. I taught at one for 6 years. I think that that's a possibility that we would look at also. You have many campuses like Satellite and Delora that could act as a junior senior and could probably attract, allowing the kids to transfer back and forth for sports and stuff like that. I think you would be able to be more competitive. Dr. Rendell and I spoke a little bit about district charters, and we met with those aerospace companies who were over the moon about developing some of those. I think those should be part of the conversation, and I know, Sue, you and I have had these, and I just want to put it on public record. The other thing is that, and in those, what we were talking about, just for clarification, is that Northrop Grumman, L3 Harris, even NASA, Northrop Grumman has in California a district charter school that is developed for their employees, and it has like a 2.5-year waiting period that they spoke about for their employees. They love that for their HR, for retention and recruitment also. So some of those competitive things that we could put together. And then one of the things I wanted to talk about was the private-public partnership agreement. So whereas we have some of our smaller schools where we don't have the revenue sources that we may want out of there, maybe there's a way that we can use a private-public partnership to offset the cost so that those kids can still stay there. I feel very strongly about, your home school being your home school, and if there's a way we can find out how to mitigate that, that would be great. And then as far as the redistricting, what I would like to see is when we build out, like a lot of these, because I know Vieira very well with their build outs, I know the years of progression. Hearing that we have 10,000 people down in Palm Bay, because I know some of those areas, I know the developers for those. Maybe a schedule of, they say that this will be completed this time so that we can see the aggregate, because I think what people just saw was they're going to be like, oh my gosh, there's like 50,000 kids coming to Brevard schools, but it's over the next 10 years, 5 years, however that is. So if I could give just some sort of clarification upon those, that's what I was going to do. That's all. Anybody else have anything to say? Paul, you got anything to say on this topic? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Sue and her team,
Yeah.
echo Mr. Trent and Mr. Wright's comments that, this was a lot of work they put together. They've presented individually to all 5 of you, so they've done this presentation 6 times now. And I want to commend Sue for this forward thinking. This is proactive. We're looking down the road, trying to identify solutions before we actually have the problem. So
When do you
kudos to the
think,
team.
absolutely, when do you think this consultant will begin to work?
So you will see a proposal on one of your October board meetings, and then they'll be interviewing you probably through November and working through their work. And my guess will be a workshop format sometime in January. So
Is the plan, the time period plan to bring in the consultant, work through next year, and then maybe start some of these the following year? Or just are we hypothetically spitballing to get a direction?
So I think the workshop will give us some guidance on that, Mr. Susan, in terms
Okay.
of what's the low-hanging fruit. So for example, I think we have been pretty clear that we think we need new elementary capacity in South Brevard. Like that's our next big project. So for me, I'd like to decide where it's going and get design underway. That's, in my mind, like the tip of the iceberg project. I think we're going to have general agreement that that's something we need to do. Some of these other ideas will take a little bit longer. If, for example, when you were talking about surveying, that's probably something we can implement quickly. So I think we'll get a range of
Okay.
options of things, this is what we do now, this is what we are doing in a year from now, this is where we need to plan capital and plan investment. I think there's a whole nother conversation around our debt service leveling off in about 6 years.
Yep,
As
that's what
well
it
as
is.
the surtax renewal and how that, if in fact we want to do that, whether that goes partially towards new facilities or partially towards renewal or all, like, there's a lot of choices around that. And that choice is about a year and a half away. So I think I've got a little timeline in my notes about those decisions that we need to make and trying to marry up this process with those key decision points over the next several years.
Thank you so much for that. I think the other thing that we may need to understand is that I've asked some of my other board members when we were working through some of these things, that none of the other school districts that I know of, and I talked to a bunch, have had any kind of movement in this area. So this is kind of a one-of-a-kind thing for a board to take on with the district and everything else. So thank you so much, Sue. It goes very far what you're putting together.
Well, thanks. I have great folks on my team, and really as we sort of stuck our toe in the water on this, and as we got into the ankle and the knee, and just sort of kept going. It's really there's some great work around this entire topic, and once we start to put some of the facilities data into the mix, I think you'll see even more good stuff. That's good information for decision making. So I'm really proud of what they did. So thank you guys.
Love it. Anybody else?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next topic is Board Policy 2417, Comprehensive Health Education.
Mr. Chair, you want to take a 5-minute break while we change personnel, or just keep moving?
I would love to.
You guys want one? All right, we're going to be back in 5 minutes. The next topic is Board Policy 2417, Comprehensive Health Education. Ms. Tara Harris, you have the floor.
So, good afternoon, Board, and I am here to go over the changes, and I also refer to your notes back when you reviewed the 2000 policy. So I was able to see what you were looking for to make sure we could encompass that into this policy. The big changes I want to highlight are those items that were impacted by 1069. So that speaks to what instruction can look like K-8. Additionally, in that bill also is now our instructional materials for this content must be state approved before being board approved. So that's new. And we did just receive the link from the DOE, so we'll be submitting all of our instructional materials for state approval prior to coming forward with you, and that is mentioned in this policy as well. You will also see that you wanted to make sure that we were reflecting the Neola language, which we did, but also embedding the instruction on the acquired immune deficiency syndrome, as well as the CPR pieces, and those are have also been added to the policy.
Any questions?
Yes, just really quickly. So as far as understanding the process, so I saw, I don't remember, somewhere across my email that we had to have our health curriculum, whatever, into the state by September 30th. So is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so the district will submit that to the state, and once it comes back and they give the seal of approval, then it'll come before for us, because the law also says that we have to approve it every year.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Correct. And so that's an additional step. We'll be submitting it to the state, and then once we get it back from them, then we'll bring it forward to the board for approval.
And that's for this current school year?
Yes. Now, fortunately, a lot of the content, and of course, you know, I can speak very well to the elementary, the 5th and 6th grade, that would not be done until April and May. So the timing of all of this, and then also working with Danielle O'Reilly, she's our K-12 PE content specialist. The pacing of when we hit these lessons is not going to be, we're going to be in good shape, even with sending it to the state and bringing it back for board approval on when that pacing of that instruction would occur.
Okay, thank you.
I had one question, just in regards, I think it's Roman numeral 8, on the process to request an exemption. So I know with our elementary students, a lot those forms go home with the parents to have the option to opt out. But this policy almost looks like we're just going to put it on the website. We're not necessarily going to send those forms out. Is that something that we could look at doing a little differently on, hey, saying that's even part of our enrollment packet, that they have the chance, if they want to opt out?
Absolutely, and this, I know we're not speaking about 2 other policies that are coming before you soon, which also speak to opt-out options, and so we're going to be overly clear in the parents' right to opt out of this instruction. So you are correct. In elementary, what we recommended is it be part of that registration packet. So parents know when I'm registering my child for school, this is content that I can opt out of if I so choose. So in the secondary, it has been put on the website, but what we will be doing, just because this will be brand new, not necessarily brand new instructional materials, but going through a brand new approval process, we'll make sure to just go ahead and send that home and push it out perhaps through Focus. We can work with Mr. Cheatham to push that out so all parents don't have to go for 18 clicks to try and find, so they have the option. I feel like it's very beneficial to, I'm very proud of what we're going to put out, and so I welcome parents to review it and make that choice for their child. And so making that opt-out process very transparent will just be part of our way of work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I when my children were in those grades, I was one of the only parents that would go and watch the videos, and that's an option that every parent has available to them. And I don't know if they know that or not, but they have the ability to go and sit down. I sat in the principal's office and watched the curriculum just to see what was going on there, and made my decision from there. But every parent has the option to do that, so exercise that right if there's a concern. But if we give them the option for the opt-out, I just didn't want it to be, like you said, 15 clicks away on a website, we can't find it, and it's very difficult for them.
And with our, review process, for the elementary, it is video, so you have to make an appointment to come in and watch.
Right.
But for all of the other instructional materials, we did pull them down now because we're going forward with the state approval first. But once we get the approval from the state and the board, we'll be posting that back on. So they won't, they're welcome to come into the school and look for the middle school content in high school, but it will also be on that website that they can review.
Ms. Harris, so I know we can't read the state's mind ever, but my is there any idea that if the state approves it this year, I mean, I'm assuming we have to kind of send it out every year, but if we don't make any changes, is there any idea of going forward that it's not approved in perpetuity, but unless you make a change? Because the reason why I say that is if we're going to ask parents at the beginning of the year to make a decision on opt-out, which could be reversed, we may not have the materials. Obviously, if we had had that this year, we don't have the materials approved by the state and then by the board before it can go out. So we're kind of asking for them to give their approval before we even know exactly what it's going to look like. So at some point, it would seem like it would be better to kind of get that cart, the horse back before the cart, so that we can do that at the front of the year. I don't see what I'm.
Here's my thinking on this, and I mean, this is just an opinion, but my opinion would be if the statutory language doesn't change, then what is approved this year should still comply with the statutory requirements next year.
Right.
And if it does change, we know that in the summer. And so then prior to going into that enrollment process, prior to the first day of school, we would be aware, okay, the statutory language is changing to whatever that change is, and if it impacts our instructional materials, we would be revising the instructional materials and then likely have to send it for approval. So to your point, a parent opting out if we know there are statutory changes, I think we would modify our process.
Right.
If there is no new statutory language, I would presume that what's approved this year, we would resubmit it, or maybe they'll come down and say if nothing has changed, you're good. I don't want to predict what that might be, but I would assume what is approvable this year, if there's no change in statutory language, should be approved for the second year too, and future years.
Is there just a way to add into the opt-out form that this opt-out will remain in place, and then in the event of any statutory changes, it would become null and void and new, something like that? It just covers you, so it could end up being a form that lasts a few years.
Well,
Probably
and
not, but-
and we'll have the opt-out coming before you very soon. We'll have some new opt-out options too that would encompass, and those opt-out forms, because if you think of what we currently have around instructional materials, and our current, if I want to contest something now, it is in that window of 30 days after the school board has approved the adoption of materials. We will soon have some other opt-out options that could really come at any time. And so when we were talking about this new form, that's where we kind of got to. In August, I could be okay, but if a teacher decides to read a book or something that I'm not, that I would like my child to have limited access, that form could be implemented at any time.
And I just again, this is an opinion as well of my own, but I would argue the majority of people who don't want their children exposed to this kind of curriculum are traditionally going to have that opinion up front, the majority at least. And so it's best for them to be given that option in the beginning. And I would assume that we have messaging on there that this form could be rescinded at any point, as well as it could be enacted at any point as well too. So as long as we're doing our due diligence to communicate that to parents, that they have the ability to do it at any point, it doesn't have to be right there in that moment. I hear what you're saying, Ms. Campbell, but I think it's safest and best and more transparent to the parents to just have it right in the beginning of the school year.
And
When people are really paying attention to the paperwork, honestly. As a parent, you're constantly getting papers in the folders every single day, and sometimes you're getting overwhelmed. So at least in the beginning of the year, we know that they're paying attention and they're reading those papers.
And we have had examples where they will opt out, then they come in and see the curriculum and they're like, oh, I'm okay with that now. And so then they do modify that.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Anybody else have any discussions wrapped around the comprehensive health education? Hearing none, move on to the next topic, which is Board Policy 5460, graduation requirements. Dr. Rendell, do you need a 5-minute break, or are you good to go?
I think we're good to go. It's Ms. Harris again.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Harris. You have the floor.
Yes. So with 5460, again, I read your notes of when you were mentioning this, and basically it was to reflect a lot of the Neola language, but also have the addition of the progression plan. So the student progression plan link has been added. I will say that that link currently goes to the previous one because we haven't had the new one board approved yet. But once that does, this link will be modified so that it's going to the most current plan. So with this one, some of the big language changes, and I know you reviewed the Neola, but this is also saying that, you know, if a student resides or attends our BPS schools, that they have the option to take that high school equivalency exam right away. So that's the major change that you will see here. You can see also about, you know, the uniforms and those types of things for graduation, but the biggest change is that high school equivalency diploma test.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Harris. Does anybody else wish to discuss this item? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Harris. Appreciate your time.
Yes.
So the next topic we have is public policy 0169.1, public participation at board meetings. I think in discussing with staff and Paul's email, there's been some discussion wrapped around did we have majority for some of these items. I've kind of given you guys the idea of how we're going to kind of move forward with this. And one is, do you or do you not believe in separating from the agenda to non-agenda? And then the other one is, do you wish to broadcast agenda and non-agenda? So to keep it consistent, if we can move through and say, give majority, and you can have discussion wrapped around it, no big deal, but if at the end of your conversation, if you can say, I support or do not support the moving from agenda to separate to non-agenda, or I don't support that. So with that, I'll go, anybody else want to go first? It just should be real quick. We're just kind of reiterating what we did before. Anybody want to go first? I hate to always turn down Ms. Jenkins. Ms. Campbell,
I'm happy.
since it's yours,
To knock over my
Yeah.
M&Ms. Sorry, that would be
it
bad.
would be appropriate to have you go first.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to go first, and I do want to keep it short, because we've had these conversations, but I do have to address a couple things because I'm seeing so much out there in my inbox and on social media. There's a lot. There's been call to actions, and some of it has really reflected not the truth of what we've said or what our intent was, certainly. And the irony is not lost on me that we have one group who is very concerned that we're cutting off public comment and people's ability to speak, and then a group that really doesn't like that first group saying we're doing it to make the first group happy. And so those two things cannot possibly be true at the same time. So but at board, each of you should know me by now that I don't have a problem ticking off everybody for what I believe to be right. And I still feel the way that I feel for no other ulterior political motives than not just FCC. And people have tried to disprove, FCC doesn't apply or doesn't apply. Paul and I had a conversation, and about federal guidelines, trump state guidelines, but whether it's that way or not, it still comes down to my personal concern. And if it's on the agenda, then people will know because it's on agenda. If those books come to the agenda, we'll know. So I still feel like we need to separate. We need to have something in place to just protect the little ears at home from more than just sexually explicit content. Because maybe it's just because of the kind of prude I am. I don't want to broadcast cuss words. I wouldn't want somebody to stand up and read Hunger Games from the podium. But that doesn't mean that I'm willing to pull all those kinds of books off the shelf too. So, and I go back to the plain reading. People keep challenging me in conversations I have. Well, are those sexually explicit books? I'm like, no, but the plain language of the bill doesn't say. It just says challenge books on that part for my reading. So, I would be still for a separation.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Ms. Jenkins?
Yeah, I feel like I was pretty clear on this last time. I said it multiple times. I'm okay with leaving it as it is, with the caveat of the fact that, the second the public abuses it for a different purpose, that I hope that the board is open to having a conversation about mitigation. But at the same time, I'm not against separating agenda and non-agenda to at least curb it a little bit. And quite frankly, for people who are complaining about the separation, you get more time to speak. So I don't understand that concept either. You're right. Like there's conflicting opinions on both of these things that are counterintuitive to the things that they argued for 6 months ago. I don't understand it. My gut is I would love to leave it alone. I said that last time. I said it multiple times last time. I would like to broadcast it. But if someone's abusing it, then that's on them, and then it's on this board to do the right thing after that. my understanding was the last time we were having this conversation that the majority of the board was moving towards separation and recording. That's what I heard, which is why I made my statement at the end very clear that that was my second choice, but I'm okay with moving there because ultimately that would be my resolution choice if this was to be abused if left alone. And unfortunately, I don't have the most confidence that it won't be. So I think that's where we're gonna end up anyway. So first choice, leave it alone. Second choice, what I believe we said last time, separating agenda and non-agenda, but absolutely recording and posting the non-agenda so that there's still the appearance of transparency and it being posted to the public.
So for the purposes of this meeting, requesting that you are either in favor or not in favor of separating. At this time, you are not in favor of separating, correct, Ms. Jenkins?
I don't have a concrete statement on that yet because mine has, it depends on the rest of the conversation and what happens after that.
Ms. Jenkins, I'm just looking for direction.
Mr.
on
Susan, I
whether
hear
you
your
are
question,
for
and it's
or
okay
against
that you
it.
don't like my answer, but that's my answer because it'll change. Because if it moves towards leaving it alone, and then the caveat is we're still recording it, then I have post communication and conversation I want to have about it. So I said my piece. Let the rest of the board say theirs.
So what you're saying is that you're not willing to bring
What I'm
forward
saying
a
is
vote
what I
right
said,
now,
Mr. Susan.
and
Please
what
move
I'm
on to
gonna
the
do
next
is
board
ask
member.
you at the end of this to give
Yes,
me a
sir.
yes or no.
Move on to
Okay,
the next
so,
board
Mr.
member.
Trent.
Yeah, this could.
And I appreciated if you didn't speak while I was speaking, Ms. Jenkins. Go ahead.
Appreciate the same. Thank you.
Mr. Trent?
So, Mr. Chair, you had asked for us to keep this short, and so my first choice now is to basically leave it alone and continue the recording and hope, not hope, I'm sure it'll be taken care of the way it's supposed to from the chair's position. So I have
Okay.
all the confidence in that.
So, Mr. Trent, you've said you know you're not in favor of separating. Ms. Wright?
My first choice is to leave it alone as well. So thank you. I want to commend Lena on this because when our notes reflected from the workshop, she accurately wrote down what each one of us said. I went back and watched that same meeting. Oh, I'm not, I'm sorry. Multiple times, and I was the one who sent the email saying, I don't think we have a consensus because every one of us said something different on what we wanted as it moved down the line. I never was in favor, not one time, of not recording them live. I've always been a supporter of that. I said the only compromise I would make. But for right now, my choice would be leave it alone and see what happens.
Okay, and I feel the same way. I do not favor separating. So with that, we have 4. Now, coming back to you, Ms. Jenkins, did you wish to say anything now that we have the 3-1?
Yeah, so I believe that this board needs to be well aware of the responsibility that they're taking by leaving it alone, which I said from the get-go I'm fine with. But you need to be very aware of the responsibility that you're taking because you are now ahead of time very well aware of how it can be abused while also having a book committee that is not active. And we are not actively utilizing the policy that we put in place to address the very issue that might come before us. So don't be frustrated if you're criticized, because I think you all know where this is gonna go. And Mr. Susan, you have a responsibility for when that happens, and as addressed to Mr. Gibbs, you're the only one who can make that decision. You're going to be criticized on the actions that you take. So I just think if this is the way we're gonna go, that's fine, but I want everyone to be aware of where this is heading, and it's our responsibility to prevent it from being chaotic. So please be responsive if it goes the wrong direction.
Ms. Jenkins, is that a yes or a no for the
Mr. Susan,
action?
please stop being condescending. You have a board majority. I've said my piece last time. I've been very clear about where I stand. Thank you.
She's a no.
Okay. Then we have 4-1. Ms. Campbell, you have something
Yeah, I
to
did
follow up
want
with?
to. Yeah, I did. Thank you. Because we've been talking about it as if it was hypothetical, but the truth is, and I went back and watched this meeting after having a conversation with Mr. Gibbs on July the 27th. If you'll go back, when this law was in effect, but we weren't really aware of the consequences of this clause. We had 3 ladies stand up and read from books that were on the challenge list. And they weren't all stopped. They read from, some of them, a couple of them read from multiple books. But Mr. Susan, as the chair, and there's no blame to you, by the way, because also being aware of how that clause of this law affects, I probably would have done the same thing. In fact, I heard myself in the video telling you, you got to stop them. But as a result of the books that he did stop, we have now had to remove those books from our shelves. Correct, Dr. Rendell?
That is correct.
So this is not a hypothetical. We've already done it. It's already happened. And I'm not saying that those are books that I would want remain on the shelf, but I'm saying people have already gone around the process. Some of them very aware of the process because they were part of writing the process and been active on the state level and been a part of our process. So it's already happened. So this is not hypothetical. And Dr. Rendell and Paul made the right choice there because the chair did stop someone from reading. The board majority has spoken. I don't have a problem with that, but I just want us to recognize this isn't something that's out there potentially. It already happened, and we were unaware. And it might happen again, and I'm not going to be happy about it. But this is where we are.
Campbell, I appreciate you bringing that up because I wasn't aware that there were consequences to that public comment being stopped. So going forward, even though it might seem obvious because we're having this conversation now, and I honestly think for a matter of public record, can we be emailed when those decisions are made or those processes are being taken? And I'm not saying that in a shameful way. I just think that would be smart to do. Thanks.
On a side note, as we work through all this with how we're going to do it in meetings, so it applies to this policy and this discussion, but also to 2521 as we adjust it. I want to know what we're going to do as a board to assure, because the House Bill 1069 only guarantees, if I'm reading the language correctly and with the discussion that we've had, guarantees that parents can come and read from challenged books. How are we going to ensure before someone starts that the book they're reading from is one that's been challenged? Because I'll give the example, if the book Gender Queer, which was pulled immediately in an informal review by the principals where it was found in the schools when it was brought up by citizens and parents, if someone were to stand up in from our dais and start reading, the chair absolutely could stop that. I mean, there was no reason we should allow that, but without us knowing if there's somewhere on the form where they have to put the book or someone has to find, is this even one of our books? Because I'm not throwing this out as a crazy hypothetical, because we have had people come to our meetings and they heard that something's happened somewhere else in the state or even somewhere else in the country and they think it's happening here, and so they start. If this becomes a fad, I want to make sure that if we're going to have them read, that it actually is something that we can verify that that's, I'm not going to, show me that it's really in the book. You're not making this, but at least we should know that it's a challenged book. And there's, there are a few staff members that have those updated lists because I know it's a moving target. They, change depending on who's submitted what formal process or formal challenge. But at some point, I would like to know what we're going to do to just verify that is a challenged book and not something that's not even in our schools. I understand they may not be on the shelves. That would still be considered a book that's in process. But if it's already been dealt with or if we don't own it, it would not be appropriate, and we do not have to let someone read from our podium.
Can I ask a question on where we're at on the policy revision? Because I think that's very important to know. Where's that at in the process, Mr. Gibbs?
That's Ms. Harris's policy that she's working on revising. I'm not sure
Here she
how
comes.
far away they are.
So then I would need to ask, did we make, as a board, did we make it clear the revisions that we felt that was necessary?
Yes, but we're also, remember, waiting.
It's been a
on
while,
the
that's all.
state board rules.
I'm gonna let Ms. Harris talk,
Sure.
and then I'm gonna say something, because we keep bouncing around, because I'd like to have some interjection. Go ahead, Ms. Harris.
2520 and 2521 are also have forms attached that we're working on, and that is the only thing that I've been working with Rona. Is this working?
We can hear you.
Okay. So it will be on I missed the cutoff in order because we didn't have the forms done, but you will be getting both of those together with the forms. Rona told me the cutoff. I'm hoping that it's going to be on the 1st October. But I'll go back and check, and I can email all of you that date, because that was one that had, both of those had a lot of revisions just due to statutory requirements, but also the Brevard process. Both of those speak to selection, adoption, and the process for contesting, as well as the new opt-out that would be at any time, and then limiting access. So a parent can not opt out of curriculum or something, but they may want to limit access of a type of books per se for the classroom or the school library.
And that'll be the workshop that it comes to in the
Yes.
beginning. Thank you. One of the things I wanted to say is that there's all this concern about the books being read and everything else, okay? So my commitment to this board is that I'll read all of the books and the challenged phrases that are currently in, so I'll know them before they come up. And I would challenge the other board members to understand those too, because one of the things that's a disconnect between us and the public and the news organizations and everybody else is there seems to be not this knowledge of which books are being challenged. So I'm going to make a request to receive those books, and I'll start getting started. And I would say that if anybody else would like to, you can at least scan the areas that they may be challenging and look at them so that you're aware of it also. The other thing I wanted to bring up, thank you, Ms. Harris, I don't think you needed any further. The other thing is this, if you go into the Lincoln Museum for the Presidential Museum and you walk through, there's a section where he was completely attacked by the press, by individuals, by everything, and he kept moving forward, right? You look throughout our American history, every time the right to address our elected officials, our legislative assemblies, our people in the public, it has been at times when what people were saying were so negative or so bad, but now that we look back at those items, you look at what they were saying back then and you have a record of it being there and said at that location. I think we do ourselves a disservice. I've stood by the opportunity to allow people to come address us at one time during the agenda, to the point where many of our vendors have to sit through the conversations and stuff, because that's what our governing is. I think that when we start to try to change that, it hurts our process a little bit. And I understand the fear of what this one new update is, but I would say to everybody else, if you look back at history, whether that was slavery, whether that was the many of the rights that came up, there were serious conversations and debates and things that came up, and we still have it today. So I would say that what we want to do is not separate, not have it not broadcasted, but I wanted to say from my perspective, because by the time I get here, everybody else has talked like 9 times, and I've been trying to be respectful. I would say that we are prepared for what they come with, and it is their right to do so. So we need to adjust if there's something, but I do not fear somebody getting up and speaking to something that is in our schools or not. So with that, Ms. Megan, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I have
Mr.
a
Trent, you
follow-up
good?
question.
All good.
Mr.
Okay.
Rendell, or Dr. Rendell, sorry. Are the challenge books still listed on the website, or were they ever posted in the first place?
I believe that they were. I think it might take a little, navigating to find them, and we can make it easier for them, but we can certainly share the list with everybody.
I think that's
On board.
important for transparency for the public, but also just constantly being inquiries to the district. I think that would save some of our staff some time to have to keep responding to that. The one piece about this that I guess is honestly the most important is, it's kind of pivoting off of something you said, Ms. Campbell, but I feel like we're operating off of an assumption that we're going to allow people to read what they're reading and not interrupt them. And I'm comfortable with that. That's what my feeling is. That's what I said. I don't want to change it. I don't care. Like, let them read it. That fine. Let them read it. I hear your concern. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a concern with your concerns, but I believe we're operating that assumption that we all believe that. And personally, I think the public needs to know if that's the intention. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I think I heard what you said, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But if the intention is to truly let them speak and not interrupt them based on what they're saying, I think the public needs to know that, because then that will also curb some fears of people.
I don't think she said. Yeah, I think she's asking you. Ms.
No,
Campbell.
I'm asking everyone on this board,
No,
honestly.
the
They're
people that
hypothetical.
I've communicated with who've reached out over the last 24 hours or so, since all the articles and calls to action came out, I've been communicating some of those very things. Our intention is for them to be read, but they're going, and obviously if it were on the agenda, if we go with our policy the way we talked about, it's going to come back to us, they would have to be read. We're not going to break the law. We're going to follow House Bill 1069. We're going to follow the law. My personal taste is to not broadcast that, and so, I also heard the community loud and clear every time we've had this conversation, and that's why my alternative was to go ahead and record it and publish it. So there's never any silencing of anybody, because we've heard that. And I've been on the board now for 5 years and heard the public and still believe. But I know that I lost, and I'm fine with losing, but I am going to bring up my concern. My other concern is, I don't believe the chair has to have read all the books, because it's not just about reading, but memorizing. I don't think you need to have a digital catalog of everything, but I think there needs to be a way for us to follow the law, for us to verify whether it's on the form, if they put, for them to be able to identify the book that they're about to read from, because that, out of fairness too, and remember, it's not just about you. You're only going to be the chair for 2 more months potentially, so we've got to think about what this looks like moving forward. And I think there should be a way for us to identify if someone's going to use that clause in the law for this, to identify what they're reading from, and is it even in our libraries?
So I think there's a great question to Paul. Paul, can I forcibly request information from the individual that is actually speaking to? And I didn't mean to use that term. May I request, may I request, or a chair request the person to tell us what book they're reading from? And if they say no, is there any recourse, or should I, right? What can you give us guidance on that?
You can ask, but it's their public comment, and you have it open for
Right.
them to speak about whatever. We don't ask everybody to get up there and say, "What are you talking about tonight?" before they start speaking. It's on the form, but he doesn't ask them before.
It's not really
and-
followed at all.
Right, and it's not a requirement that they fill that out. A lot of forms are half filled out sometimes. So
And I'll
you gotta-
be honest, Ms. Campbell, I do plan on asking them if this starts to go what the book is, but just so you know, there's no recourse that you can say, well, then you can't speak or whatever, but I think it's a good question to ask. I think moving forward, we should ask them, hey, can you please speak to, tell me the book and title name, so that the public knows. Because the other thing is that sometimes there's assumptions that this book's that, and that's part of this entire cloud that's happening right now, is we've had people come up and say, this book's been banned, and it wasn't banned in ours, it was banned in like another state. So right. And so the issue is that I think that would be appropriate. I just wanted to set the tone for the rest of the school board, that there's no way that we can force them to do it. With that, I think you're asking us, and that was going to be the next component, is that if the board would move on actually not broadcasting any of the book review
I'm not going
section.
to go there, Mr. Susan, because that's very clear.
I
I
didn't-
mean, the
I didn't
battle's
know.
lost, so.
Well, I didn't know if you wanted that. So if not, then I won't bring it up.
Well, I mean, if the other option was asking, what I asked last time was for us to no longer live stream our public comment, but that's been made very clear, so.
No, the only thing that was clear in the vote today was that we weren't going to separate, but if you do not want to bring that forward, that's fine, but I don't mind asking
Put it
you
out
members.
there. Is
Okay.
there a willingness of the board to not live stream public comments, but to record them separately and put up a graphic and publish them later?
I'll go to Mr. Trent.
No, I'm not.
Okay, Ms. Wright.
That's a no for me.
Okay, Ms. Jenkins.
Yeah, I think we got majority there. I need to ask a clarifying question though, because I'm concerned.
She just needs to say no.
It's just no.
No, Mr. Susan, I get to say what I want to because I'm an equally elected official, and this is an important conversation that we left with a decision last time, and now we're changing. So yes, I have the right to all the constituents that I represent to ask the questions that I would like to ask in a workshop. I'm so sorry that that bothers you. So my clarifying question, Mr. Gibbs, is if Mr. Susan asks a speaker in the middle of them speaking, hey, can you please tell me what you're talking about? And it's not ill intent, but he stops them to ask that question or interrupt them about the book title or whatever if the book is challenged. Does that put us in a precarious situation because he technically interrupted and stopped the speaker?
No, not if he's going to let them go. If he
Okay.
pauses their time and says, hey, can I just learn what you're talking about?
Okay.
They
Thank you.
they still have a chance to speak.
Because I guarantee that will be something we would have heard in public comment tonight if that question wasn't asked. So, Ms. Campbell, I guess what I really need to be clear about what I'm trying to say here is if the intention of the board chair is to allow people to read what they want to read and to protest what they want to protest and not interrupt them, then we don't need to really be concerned about which books are challenged or not if we're not going to interrupt them. And that's why I asked the question that I asked, because I think the public deserves to know what your intention is. And if your intention is to potentially interrupt a speaker as they're speaking, the public needs to know that. And I agree with you, then we need to know about the challenge list. Because if the intention of the person who has the ability to stop them is to stop really if it's just really bad, then yes, they should have a list in front of them so they can make a decision of whether or not they're going to interrupt a challenged book or not. But if the intention is to just let them read because we believe it is their right to read it, then I think we need to make that clear to the public that that's what we believe.
Well, I believe that the law says that the parents have the right to read from challenged books in a meeting. That we can't stop them from reading them, and if we do, whatever. But the law, court cases, all of that allow school boards and other entities to develop public speaking rules, which we do have, to try to maintain orderly conduct and therefore we can limit the amount of time people get. We can limit like we have our policy. You can't use abusive or profane whatever language. Public, you can't name people except for the board members. And we are allowed to have those kinds of rules. What we're not allowed to 1069 overrides us in that parents can read from objectionable content. But if it's not a challenged book, like if it's genderqueer, which has already been pulled, nobody has a right to stand up in there and read from genderqueer because it's not in our school libraries, and I don't want to hear it, and I don't want to broadcast it. So my thought is, no, I think the chairman should be able to stop someone from reading a book that's from our other rules, that are in our public speaking policy. They should be able to stop someone because that's not, for one, it's obscene, and two, it's irrelevant because it's not on our shelves or in our system. I don't know if that answered your question.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that. So I think what that means is that there needs to be a list up on the dais then, and the question has to be asked then, because otherwise we're going to just arbitrarily be stopping people and not understand the consequences of stopping those people when they're speaking. That's my feeling.
Okay, so Ms. Lena, do you have enough direction from Ms. Jenkins's votes that you understand where she stood from both of those? Okay, and I think I just wanted, for point of clarification, I never had any issue with you ever bringing up any questions, Ms. Jenkins, only that I just needed to make sure that what the vote was or was not, that was it. So if that was an intention that you thought, I just wanted to clear that up. My vote is no also. And then, but I did want to ask Ms. Campbell, you're saying yes to it because you brought it forward, or did you want to make a vote based on that? That's all. Because you had brought it up as a topic.
It's a consensus, and the consensus has been reached that we're not going to do that. So I think that's where Ms. Jenko was trying to go, because we don't vote in workshops.
Well, you kind of give your intention,
Right.
and,
And
that's
I
what
gave
we're
my
trying to look
intentions.
for, and it's just
And I wasn't-
completely. Just a
The
yes
thing
or a no
is,
pretty easy to get.
Mr. Susan, I understand how to listen and to interpret what people saying. And that's why when you say, well, you're going to bring it up. Well, I mean, if I have to bring it up, I'll bring it up so we can settle it, make it clear for the public. That's fine. I asked, there's not support. Let's move on, please.
Ms. Campbell, it's just that sometimes it's not as clear as people think, and it's just easier for the board chair to say yes or no. That's all. And that helps set it either way. So with that, I wanted to bring up, is everybody okay with the public participation at board meetings conversation? All right, good. Next thing is that I would like to request to move the October 3rd workshop to an offsite. Reason behind is we have Dr. Rendell who needs some direction on what kind of an evaluation we should be giving him, along with like when his dates and everything else would occur. I think we also have Paul's evaluation dates and follow-up and stuff like that we have to do. We have to sort of set strategic planning and those items that we would like to set those components to. We also have to kind of discuss through follow-up and unfinished business that we had from January, I think it was 5th. I think we as a group just need kind of a reset because God willing, I will not be chair after November. And I would like to have it to where there's a little bit of direction prior so that the person can kind of move through. And I understand that we will have possibly 2 new board members, but there is some needs of the district that we need to sort of start helping them along the way. So I would like to move October 3rd to an offsite, let staff develop that. There's a ton of other items that we need to kind of wrap our heads around, but that was my thought process. Is everybody okay with that?
I'm confused because I thought we had been asked to move the October 3rd meeting from the morning to afternoon because there was an event. That was next week.
We actually have 2 conflicts. Next week, I'm committed to speak at a breakfast event sponsored by the Education Foundation. It won't conclude in time for us to hold the work session at 9 a.m. We could continue with the work session at 9 a.m. and I could have someone sit in for me, Ms. Han or somebody else. The following Tuesday, October 3rd, there is the State of the City's address, or State of the City's meeting being sponsored by one of the chambers, and some board members had expressed interest in attending that. That is in the morning on the 3rd.
What time is that, Dr. Rendell?
I believe it starts at 8.
And it should be over by when?
It might be concluded by 9, but we wouldn't be back here. It's in Cocoa Beach.
Would you guys feel we may be able to do an offsite over in Cocoa Beach, say at 10 o'clock? That way, if there's an opportunity for us to meet, we could do that right afterwards?
We could explore that.
If that's the only conflict.
On the
Are
3rd,
we-
that is the only conflict.
Yeah, I'm fine either day with moving the meeting back a little bit if we need to on my schedule. I mean, because we're scheduled to do what, the 8,000s next week and the 9,000s the following week. That was the plan for that. So I'm just trying to. There's a bunch of moving pieces here. So for me, I'm okay with moving either one of those back. On the 3rd. Is the idea that we would not do the 9,000s, but we would do all these things instead and do the 9,000s later? Yep. Okay. And do we have, people are doing a lot of stuff. Are we going to have all of that wrapped around together to do an offsite on the 3rd? I'm
pretty confident we could put something together for the 3rd.
Okay. Yep. To be quality what we want to do that. I get that. That's my true question. So if we're talking about the 3rd, we're talking about making offsite. That's usually more of an all-day thing. Yep. So then if you're not talking about just moving it back, but I am also available for the whole day on the 3rd if that's what we need to do.
Shoot for like 10 to 4, have lunch brought in, and that should be a window if everybody's okay with that. I think I am.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I'm fine for the 3rd, but for the 26th, I personally would not like to delay it because I have to be somewhere else in the evening time. And if someone can just fill in for Dr. Rendell, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just a workshop.
That's just a 3-hour one, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep. All right, so we're okay with that component, and if there's not anybody else, I kind of sent a note around, asked anybody else if they had anything, but there was no.
So wait, let me clarify. So next week, we're still going to meet 9 to 12,
Yes.
and we're going to have somebody filling in for you.
Correct.
And the
On
3rd,
October 3rd.
TBD.
Offsite location TBA,
Okay,
10 to 4.
10 to 4.
10 to 4.
Everybody good?
Good.
For the good order? Thank you.